Let's be innovative. Let's challenge a norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
Lionheart returns debuting its new championship format. For the first time, Lionheart's best will battle in a multi-class format featuring BMW's all-new M Hybrid V8 and M4 GT3 machines. 55 drivers will face off in the ultimate test in the ultimate driving machine. 18 races at the world's most demanding road courses where traffic takes on a whole new meaning. This year, Lionheart will crown 2 champions, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Blackkicker Sportscar Championship, presented by BMW Performance Driving School, starts now. Just 2 races are left in the Butt-Kicker Sports Car Series, and we stay in the land of the rising sun for the penultimate time in 2023-2024. It's here at the Mobility Resort Motegi that drivers will set up their championship bids. Welcome along here to the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Twin Ring, presented by DonateLife.net. It's Arjuna Kankipati alongside with Andrew Kinsella, ready to walk you through the next 90 minutes of racing action as we say farewell to 2023. Let's dive straight in towards what's going to be a pretty fascinating BMW Performance Driving School pre-race show, because a couple of weeks ago we were racing at Suzuka. Now, Andrew, we've made the relatively short trip over towards Twin Ring Motegi, and it's here where drivers will get their penultimate chance to really get the championship swing sorted out.
The Lionheart Tour of Japan is concluding at Twin Ring, now Mobility Resort Motegi, and we are down to the final 2 races, Arjuna. Just this one, and then 1 month from now in Daytona for our series finale, and that one's going to be an extra special one under the lights. But for right now, I think all focus is on the Mobility Resort Motegi, and particularly on our GTP battle, because it is things are heating up right at the top of those standings, aren't they?
This graphic created at the start of the year on iRacing, it was still called Twin Ring Motegi. No longer, it's now being retitled Mobility Resort, as we switch from the Next Level Racing schedule over to the BMW Performance Driving School standings, because look at that, it's 7 points between Phil Krause and John Badefer for the private label Team Hype and the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing crews with just the 2 rounds to go. They have built, Andrew, a bit of a separation back to Graham Sanders, with Austin Young slightly further back as well.
Krause and Badefer are definitely rising to the top here, but mistakes from either of them today, and Graham Sanders and Austin Young, they're still waiting in the wings. There's still a lot of points on the table that they can potentially gain on those top two drivers. So they're not out of it yet, but right now the eyes are on Kraus and Banford. And in practice today, Arjuna, for this race, they were separated by 1/100th of a second.
It's going to be fun, and I think there is a bit of pressure in qualifying here with a small field. There may be some breakaways, given that the likes of O'Brien and Guyon are fighting for 5th in the championship amongst themselves. David Siron not that far back as well, so much that I think will go on across of that LMDH GTP category. Here's the GT3s, of course, split into Pro and AMs, where they fight on track together for the same points. We divvy them up, though, in the championship one another. Sean Campbell has waltzed away with the championship, has been perfect when he's been around. Ryan Otis has taken advantage of Campbell's disappearance on a couple of occasions to build up that only 8-point margin to Joshua Chin for second in the Pro Championship, while Chase Wilson has been the talk of the AMs, and I'm not sure if mathematically it's done and dusted just yet, Andrew, but realistically, Chase could put one hand on the championship himself here today.
If it's not done and dusted, I think it will be by the end of this race here today, because there simply won't be enough points for those AM drivers to make up. Keep in mind that they do score the same points as the pros, so generally speaking, those AM drivers, they're not in it for the win. They're more in it for 5th to 7th place points. And then I also want to highlight the battle for 4th in Pro is also heating up between Morhart and Marquez. Marquez has been using consistency here lately to really start to close up on Morhart.
Yes, Morhart has shown speed, and we'll see if he can just stick towards the front here in the closing stages of the championship. And backup is what is also a pretty impressive charge for Synergy Motorsports in the GT3 Team Championship, as we look at the HyperX Team points and HydroRace Geodesic Racing, as well as Synergy Motorsports at this point have the championships basically locked down. It's Synergy Lavar Motorsports as well as Graphics LC in second, and with more than 100 points back to their counterparts further behind. And such has been the strength of some performances over the season. Sean Campbell by himself sits third in the combined GT3 classifications. Phil Kraus sits 5th by himself in the combined LMDH Team Championship as well. So plenty of strong runs for them to be talking about. Here's a look at the Gomez Sim Industry Series details in our debut season of this Buttkicker Sports Car Series in what is the 10th year of the Lionheart Racing Series. We have two ultimate driving machines, the BMW M Hybrid V8 and the BMW M4 GT3, all with custom fixed setups built by the Majors Garage. It's a cash and prize pool of $18,000, the most important of them being, at least in my opinion, the ones that the GT3 champion as well as the LMDH champion will drive away in. A BMW M4 GT4 experience and the BMW Performance Driving School. It's 90-minute timed races, live race control, and so as we look at the arena track analysis, a return here to the land of the rising sun for the drivers. Andrew, it is though a fundamentally different track to what we had at Suzuka.
Yeah, I would say almost diametrically opposite here, Arjuna. You got very, very long straightaways here, coming down into much slower corners. At Suzuka, it was a fast and flowing track with a lot of switchbacks. Here, not so much. You have a couple of chicanes to deal with, but other than that, it's just long straightaways, and it's all about corner exit and getting the power down smoothly and effectively and maximizing those long straightaways.
And I think the one thing that's going to be interesting is very stop and start, right, Andrew? It's built within the bounds, of course, of an oval as well. There's no actual overlap. It's not a roval in the American sense, and so there's compromises being made to cut underneath of the banks of turns 1, 3, and 4.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a unique sort of layout, and the other thing about this track is it's very, very flat. The camber here is almost non-existent, so where you're normally used to being able to push the car just a little bit and use the camber of the track, here it almost falls away from you in places, and you really have to sometimes tiptoe around, especially in those big, heavy GT3 cars. So it's going to be a lot of finesse, but then you have to mash that power down and get it down effectively. So it's going to be a tough challenge for these drivers for sure.
I really like this look from up above. You don't really get a sense of the elevation change, which this facility does have, but it's not necessarily its most defining characteristic by any means. Drivers out on track for qualifying. Let's take the time to thank those that make all of this possible, starting with HyperX. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt kicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track. Slip of your tire and engine redline. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. Visit thebuttkicker.com to learn more. If you think sim racing is thrilling, try getting behind the wheel of a real race car. The BMW M4 GT4 experience at the BMW Performance Driving School in Thermal, California puts you in the cockpit of one of BMW's fastest cars, complete with roll cage and racing slicks. You'll get fitted with a racing suit, practice pit stops, and lap their track with pro instructors. Nothing virtual about their thrills. To book your M4 GT4 experience, call or visit the links on screen. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit nextlevelracing.com. Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. And Arena, an all-new esports streaming experience driven by real-time interactions between gamers and their communities. Arena brings live broadcast fan engagement to the next level. Get involved and make a difference on arena.tv. And so qualifying almost complete for the majority of the drivers. They get 4 attempts with the track all to themselves. As it stands right now, it's Phil Krause on top, it's Austin Young second in your LMDH class, and over in the GT3s, no surprise to see Sean Campbell at the top there, but by only a tenth and a bit of a second clear of Ryan Otis. It'll be interesting to see if that's a margin that can be held relatively steady through the course of the race itself. There's the order on the left-hand side. Interestingly, best of the yams is not Chase Wilson, Andrew, it's Trevor Malone instead.
Yeah, the driver that's been chasing Chase all season long has been Trevor Malone, and he's just gotten the better of Chase so far here in this qualifying session. It's been a tale of what might have been for Trevor Malone, because he's had some very strong races, but he's had some trouble finishing it out, and otherwise I think the championship battle would have been a little bit closer between himself and Chase Wilson.
Yeah, let's not forget that the summer slump in some ways for Chase, missed a couple of rounds, and then when he was back, there were a couple of instances of just being mixed up in incidents, often through no fault of his own, and so I did see the gap momentarily close, but drop rounds have intervened and slightly shaken things back up, all things considered. Here comes Sean Campbell. He's going to head to the line in what will be his final timed attempt in the WMP Racing Where's My Pipes number 26, and well, there's an improvement. It's no longer just a tenth and a half. Instead, it's, well, just over a tenth and a half instead.
And is it very much of a surprise, Arjuna, that we've got the order that we do in GT3? Sean Campbell, Ryan Otis, Josh Chin, and Matthew Morehart. How many times have they qualified this season in that order? It seems to be that definitely they are the four best of the GT3 fields this year.
Absolutely, and I have the sneaking suspicion that we are going to see a bit of a breakaway. I don't think we're going to see a train build, but there's just 90 seconds left in the session left, and here comes Bradley Sexton up towards the final sector of the lap. It's an important hairpin that you work your way out of. He runs a little bit wide, all things considered, trying to get onto the hybrid that kicks you up to a full 500 horsepower and then run yourself down the hill into what's a relatively tricky braking zone. Of course, no ABS for these prototype machines, but doesn't puff up the brakes on the right front. Instead, just runs a little bit deep and will invalidate the lap by running off the track.
Yeah, unfortunate there for Bradley. He was looking at improving potentially there, but this is another thing that it gives us an opportunity to talk about as he ducks into the pits. This is a very, very unusual and tricky pit entry, isn't it?
Yes, but racing driver excuses, Andrew. They just have to learn where to brake.
That is true, but we all know that braking is a driver's least favorite thing to do.
It is optional sometimes, it does feel like, right? Drivers don't want to do it.
No, and with the quick chicane there, it really produces some drama as you get into pit lane there. It's a tricky pit in, and we're going to watch it throughout the course of this broadcast.
Without a shadow of a doubt, and fuel window around 20-21 laps in both the classes, so we do always expect them to be in past the top of the half hour. Again, a 90-minute timed race. We see it often broken up into 2 pit stops, 3 stints, and There's a bit of flexibility as how to play that. Not sure how much we're going to see the difference through the field. Ryan Otis, I've just noticed, is a little bit clear of Josh Chin in that qualifying order, all things considered. He'll take some, I think, heart from that. We're ready to go for the final time in 2023, the penultimate time in this inaugural season of the Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. Let's run you down to the Butt Kicker starting grid, where it's Phil Kraus on top with a 136.538, the championship leader doing exactly what he wants to do, lead the field out of the final corner to the green. Austin Young will be alongside, while John Bader for second in points, about 7 points back and almost a quarter of a second off the pace in qualifying. It'll be David Sirwell alongside him in the Synergy Lavoie Motorsports number 99, while Graham Sanders and then Michael O'Brien make up the rest of your front 6 starting positions. It'll be Matt Taylor in the Patchworks, the Graphics LC Tonnerre machine. Alexander Van der Sant rolls alongside him with Bradley Sexton, Alex Guy on the final 2 machines in the 10-car BMW M Hybrid. LMDH field. Over to your GT3s, where it's once again Sean Campbell at the front, but the margins behind relatively close. Otis will be alongside him with Chin, and then Morehart behind both of them on row 2. Brian Bennett alongside Trevor Malone, the first of the AMs on the 3rd row of the GT3 starting formation. It will be Chase Wilson, then the championship leader in the AMs behind Malone. Lionel Caliso alongside him with Jimbo Pfeiffer alongside Creighton Carter. Craig Forsyth rolls with Chris Staples, and then just 12 of your GT3 machines in this penultimate round of the season. The drivers are already getting themselves ready to rumble here for what is a relatively short formation lap, so not much time to get the crucial temperature into the tires. Let's jump on board and walk you through what will be today's featured on-board camera, starting with John Bader for whatever you play, however you play. HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. Michael O'Brien carries with him the BMW Performance Driving School. Drive on the edge of physics and experience the ultimate rush. Visit bmwperformancedrivingcenter.com. Over in the GT3s, it will be Sean Campbell carrying Donate Life. Learn more about organ, eye, and tissue donation and register today at donatelife.net. While alongside him on the front row of the grid, it will be Ryan Otis carrying with him Butt Kicker. Sim racing is better with Butt Kicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com. And of course, a split class start for the drivers to focus their attention on. It's Phil Kraus leading the LMDHs to the starting zone. Alongside him, the first of the Hydra Race Geodesic Racing contingent. Penultimate round of the championship. We're ready to go racing here at Mobility Resort Motegi. A thundering start from the private label Team Hype Machine, who will hold on to the race lead. But as we cycle through the double right-hander, it's now back onto the hybrid, onto the power, and in towards the crucial braking zone of turn number 3. No one going to get aggressive and force the issue just yet. Single file for them, as here come the GT3s, Andrew, out of turns 1 and 2.
A nice clean start from the GT3s as well so far. Everybody's been able to keep it nicely on track. Coming down in a little bit of a heavier braking zone here for turn 3 here.
It's alongside, behind for second, and this is going to be a chance if Chin can get back up underneath to compromise Ryan Otis in that Synergy Motorsport blue and red, but not going to happen as we filter on to the run that will see them cut under the oval for the first time of asking. Left side of the screen, the GTPs, the LMDHs, left then right, then left again as they flick their way through the S's complex. Chin doesn't look for the move just yet, though. I think, Andrew, we can already tell fuel saving might be on his mind.
And what else is new for Josh Chin? We've seen him a number of times just using alternate strategies, sometimes to good effect, sometimes to lesser effect, and it looks like already right now that's at the top of Chin's mind.
Love that shot down the back straightaway. This is where the track drops away as it now gets ready to cut back underneath for those race-leading prototypes. Again, split class start will mean that we do get traffic sooner than you would have if they started on the back of one another. End of the opening lap, though, is going to see Kraus hold on to the race lead. No one in that LMDH class goes off the track. All 10 of them will finish up the opening lap, albeit with Alex Guyon a little bit further behind than maybe he would have wanted to be. We cycle back over to the GT3s down the hill under the oval, and Ryan Otis now almost completely out of drafting range.
Yeah, it was a masterful first lap here for Sean Campbell, and he's done exactly what he needed to do, put himself well in front of Ryan Otis, and that is definitely out of drafting range at this point through that final complex of corners there. So already in this race, I think Otis is shifting his focus from the car in front to the car behind, and keeping one eye on that number 73 of Josh Chin.
I was getting so excited as well. After qualifying, at least.
But Arjuna, this track is really not very conducive to the draft. Yes, you have the long straightaways, but because you have the very heavy braking zones at the end of almost every straightaway, it does sort of lend itself to the cars spreading out just that little bit more than at a track, say, like Suzuka.
And don't forget, by the way, you can follow along with timing and scoring at lh.RaceSpotTV if you want to pick where your favorite drivers are on track. That's an easy place for you to follow along with strategy as well. I kind of wonder, you mentioned, of course, draft playing its part here, but let's not also forget that, Andrew, we didn't get to it in our pre-show, but these cars have had an update in the recent couple of days, so the drivers have been having to adapt and understand exactly how to get the most out of the changes, which I must say, Trevor Malone has done a very good job of doing so far.
So we're on to the 2024 Season 1 build here on iRacing, and it has brought a measure of different changes to both the GT3s and the LMDHs. Both classes were rebalanced for a balance of performance, and I don't think it has fundamentally altered the driving too much, but it just changes your approach just that little bit, and it's all about being able to adapt quickly on the fly, because as you say, it's basically been less than a week since these changes have been implemented.
All I will say is I'm not a driver anymore, unfortunately. I don't get the time to go and do as much behind the wheel as I would want to, but from the little I have done and from understanding things for IMSA Esports, GTP hasn't changed that much at all. They have narrowed the balance of performance, although there's maybe some slight tweaks needed track to track to get it dialed in for some of those top level drivers. GT3, I'm not entirely sure, but it does seem as though they were talking about now tires lasting longer, and the reason why that's important, Andrew, is we only have 30-minute stints, and therefore we've talked a lot about tires and fuel are done at the same time. Do you want to take tires or not? I've heard rumblings from drivers in IMSA Esports, for example, that double stinting tires is risky. You might blow the tires, but it can be faster if you get it right. Is that something that might hold true here today? Only practice and data would tell you.
Yeah, and I think it will. And with this series, with the limited fuel that it has, we've already seen most drivers in the GT3s will, on at least one stop, take only 2 tires. I think that there is a very good chance that goes down to no tires.
Ooh, interesting. And some drivers are better at that than others. I, for example, didn't always appreciate it. I think Austin Young's, indeed, through turn 1 and 2 off the track, and fortunately only down to 6th position for the time being.
And Van de Sant through turn 1 as well. There was 2 separate incidents in the same corner in the space of about 5 seconds for your LMDH field, but that's a shame for Austin Young. He had a really strong start. He lost 2nd place to his teammate, and then he just went too deep into turn 1. There's no two ways about it. And when you go that deep, it almost looks like he just missed a braking marker and just forgot to brake, if I'm being quite honest. And then Van de Sant was trying to make a move on Michael O'Brien, just gets in that little bit too deep and had a really nice save there, but lost the place to Bradley Sexton.
I'm impressed as well when you don't have the driver aids that you do in some of the other machines, that Van de Sant was able to pitch that back around. We know that these cars can be sensitive under braking with the way the regen works as well, so able to hold on. But as we now gather things back up at the front, now Kraus has, I mean, for the most part, being able to break away from most drivers. Baderford's keeping him on as Sanders, and now up to 3rd as a result of the mistake from Austin Young. But you can see we're not into the traffic just yet. It's probably going to take us a good another 5, 6, maybe 7 laps from now before that is a real reality for your leaders. But you can already see the separation building in these prototypes.
Absolutely, but crucially for Baderford, he was able to get around his teammate early on in the race. I believe it was right in that first couple of corners. He was able to get around Austin Young, and it's allowed him to stay just in contact with Phil Kraus. And I think that's Baderford's mission for today. It seems like Kraus, especially in qualifying, was just slightly faster than the geodesic racing driver. So it's going to be very important that for the points race that Baderford keeps an eye on on Kraus. Meanwhile, Young is on the recovery now, and he is the one all over the back of Michael O'Brien here.
Yeah, he's going to be a feisty one. The slightly reduced field that we have for these LMDHs does mean that on the left side you can see all 10 of the cars and exactly where they are at any time. Also means that we'll be able to follow along with them a little bit easier than if there are more of them in numbers. You heard for a second there the slightest hint of a dab of the clutch. It's one thing that you can do in the GTPs that you can't necessarily do in those GT3 machines to save just a little bit of fuel. I wonder if Young is recognizing that he doesn't want to be too aggressive just yet, and he will have to potentially take his opportunities as they come. Back over to the leaders in the GT3. Sean Campbell, once he broke clear of the draft, has settled back into a rhythm. Last lap was only half a tenth quicker than those behind.
But how typical of this is it? How typical of Sean Campbell races this, Arjuna, where he gets the separation that he needs, and then all it is just maintaining that gap and eliminating any possibility of mistakes. So you know that Campbell, he's not pushing nearly as hard as he could be right now. He's just settling into this race. He realizes that there's still 80 minutes of this 90-minute race to go, and it's the pro move to do this, isn't it? Just to settle in and let this race happen.
It's not the easiest track to pass at either. It is one where, because of the stop and start nature, you need to A, get a very good run out of some of the other corners, or B, wait for a mistake to really try and make things happen. Maybe it's going to mean that we're only almost 10 minutes in, haven't had any traffic just yet. The first cycle's going to see some GT3s try and follow their way on through, especially given that, for example, Matthew Morhart is back now in 6th position. I've noticed, by the way, we were talking about championship fights, and you highlighted Morhart and Andrew Marquez split by, 13 points coming into this one. Marquez MIA tonight is going to have a lot of work heading into, well, the night at Daytona.
Yes, he will, but fortunately for Marquez, I believe he does have some fairly decent drop results to fall back on, just due to his consistent run of form in this series. So hopefully it won't affect him too much, and he'll have to be liking where Morhart is in the race so far, even behind your top AM driver, which is not the driver that we're on board with here, Chase Wilson. It is Trevor Malone with a very strong effort in 5th position right now.
He is running lines, though, that's now seeing Morhart getting increasingly desperate in terms of trying to set something up. And so as we get ready to say hello to traffic, because here comes Phil Krause in the bright pink front end private label Team Hype machine. It's going to be a pretty short run, just 12 of the GT3 machines, but it's 10 minutes in with 6 laps complete that Krause hits the back of the first of the cars. As we jump on board with John Baderfer, he's now going to get a good opportunity to cycle past the 53 of Craig Forsyth, and in front of him, Krause has an aggressive look past into turn 3.
This is one of the benefits of this Mobility Resort Motegi circuit, is that the track here is relatively wide, and the straights do allow the LMDHs to really be able to sort of scythe through these GT3s rather well. So doesn't look like either of those two drivers were really too terribly held up by the GT3 traffic.
No, I think they got pretty lucky with that, and now they'll head off into the second batch effectively and hope that they can get on clear. They've already built up another 2 odd seconds to Graham Sanders, David Zira and company further back, as there goes the number 100 of Sanders up the inside and slipping on through. Meanwhile, Austin Young is still yet to find a way past the Kiwi Michael O'Brien, and here comes the switchback as tries to jink back underneath. Still some traffic though in front, and O'Brien's running the defensive lines.
You could see Young just got a little bit loose on power down, had to lift there, and that's all it takes with this hybrid power system. And it's allowed Young another opportunity here, potentially at the end of the straightaway. O'Brien was defensive before, but he left the door open here for Young, and Young is sending it on the brakes there.
And behind, a bit more tentative for, I believe that was Chris Staples and Creighton Carter, not wanting to duke it out in the same effect for the GT3s. And Young's got one more position, still has a long way to go in terms of time, though. He's a full 6 seconds off the back of second place, and John Baderfer, who has lost a bit more ground in the cycle of traffic. I saw moments where both Ryan Otis and Josh Chin have been pushing off the track, and now as Krause dispatches of second and only has one more car in the train to pass before he's got clean air for quite a while. And for all of these drivers, first cycle through traffic, seeing them be able to break away from Bennett, Malone, and those behind.
Yes, it has, and we're seeing Baderfer getting held up just a little bit here in the final throes of this GT3 traffic, and it's allowed Phil Krause at the front end of the LMDH field to stretch the gap out from about 1.5 seconds to almost 3 seconds now. So Everybody's started to spread out just that little bit, but this is the real battle. Moorhart's finally looking on Trevor Malone.
Is he going to force the issue, though? Wilson's lost a bit of ground. Moorhart kicks up a bit of the grass, cutting through the inside of turn 8. Turn 9 is not really a place where you can make a move, but again, if you get the run off the corner, there's a chance. And here comes Bradley Sexton in the number 16, that bright pink machine, to just slip up the inside and force Moorhart to just open up the corner. Wilson closes in once again. Moorhart's losing ground here, crucially, to the likes of Otis and Chin. Drivers that we know, Andrew, he can keep up with when he's got his race pace going. Let's not forget that he started up in 4th.
Yeah, certainly Moorhart will be disappointed that he finds himself back in this 6th position and unable to get around Trevor Malone at this point. But at the same time, Malone isn't exactly going too slow right now. He's only 8 seconds back of your leader, Sean Campbell. And he's only about 2.5 seconds back of Brian Bennett in 4th position. So it's not like Malone is going extremely slowly. You just feel for Matthew Moorhart because you know that he's just chomping at the bit to get back around him.
But this is the thing, AMs versus pros, they fight for the same points on track. They're just in separate championship mixes. That's how things work. That's what they've got to deal with at the end of the day. Austin Young's trying to slice his way now through the patchwork number 8 of Matt Taylor. Jinx to the inside, Jinx back into line. Again, they've all got fixed setups, let's not forget, so they don't have the ability, if they've got, for example, less downforce, to just slide their way on through and then be a bit of a blocker in the corners and through some of the twistier stuff. Instead, they've got to make do with what they've got. What I do believe, though, Andrew, is they do have the ability, if they want, to dial up a bit more energy from the hybrid system and tweak it into attack mode.
Yeah, they do have control over the hybrid system to at least a limited extent, and it does allow for some different deployments, different strategies. But you can see as we ride on board here with David Sirwa, I just want to talk about the number 99 here for a second, because he had a really strong qualifying effort here today, Arjun, and he's backing it up in the race performance here. He's holding back Matt Taylor and Austin Young quite admirably at this point.
Yeah, this is as well, now that we've got out of traffic, just an opportunity for the Canadian to hit some solid laps, and under the oval once again we go. I mean, we've come to Motegi many times before on the oval. Feels quite nice to also get a trip to the Grand Prix configuration here in the penultimate round of the Butt Kicker Sportscar Series. The final round again of 2023. These drivers get one more opportunity before on the 15th of January under the night lights at the Gomez Industries Race for the Championship. We assume that Sean Campbell's going to grab a championship there, we'd hope. Chase Wilson's probably also going to grab a championship there. It's just yet to be determined in the LMDHs. And even as it runs right now, it will go down to that final race. And Phil Krause cannot rest on his laurels. Daytona is an unpredictable place at the best of times.
It certainly is. Almost anything can happen. You have that. We talk about the long straightaways here, but when you take into account all of the banking and in a NASCAR through the tri-oval, and NASCAR 3 and 4, the Daytona Roval is a challenge and a unique challenge all unto itself. So anything can happen, as you say, and we've seen almost anything happen, not only in the sprint races that we've had, but also in the 24-hour events that we've broadcast here on RaceSpot over the years as well.
And another one coming up soon. Creighton Carter, Chris Staples duking it out, hammer and tongs, and still not done and dusted. Staples has been trying, and tries again, but has to back out of it, all as Craig Forsyth slots in from behind. He sent a message, by the way, after qualifying had come to an end, as the graphics go wild for this battle that we're watching right now. Found out in qualifying, Andrew, that his load cell pedal for the brake was disintegrating.
Oh no. Yeah, that is you don't think very often of the technical faults that can happen in sim racing, but actually mechanical failures can and do happen with probably too much regularity in top-level sim racing, don't they?
Probably just a little bit too much. This, though, is just a self-inflicted error from Graham Sanders in that number 100 Hydro Race geodesic racing machine. You ride on board, you see him maximizing the track, but even the shift down to first doesn't see him bleed off enough of that momentum, and suddenly finds himself in the front of the train. Sirwa, Taylor, and then his teammate Austin Young directly behind him. And what is a fight for the final step on the podium?
And we were mentioning earlier that Sirwa was being really strong, and that's a byproduct of that. Is just that little small mistake has put Sanders right back into the clutches of David Sirwa. And honestly, Sirwa has been matching him fairly closely for pace throughout the course of this race. So I don't think that Sanders is by any means out of the woods, but this is the real battle right here. Austin Young all over the back of Matt Taylor. He's making a move here in the hairpin.
And it's going to see no contact because Taylor opens up the corner almost more. Argy-bargy on the exit, but that's good respect for racing pixels left between the two. Taylor still alongside, but now on the outside in a corner where as the track falls away from you, you really don't want to be left out to dry. And as there's some smoke from up in front, a driver locks up that inside brake. Taylor loses out. Young slides on through, and Taylor says, you know what, I've reached the pit stop window, let me take that trip down to pit lane, although it's come unstuck.
Yeah, we were talking about the pit lane right off the top of the broadcast, and Matt Taylor, our first person to attempt the pit lane entry, and the first person to get it wrong.
That's going to be is that an unsafe pit entry?
I believe it is, Arjuna.
That's going to add extra pain because he's going to have to now serve a penalty on top of that. So we switch over to Staples and Carter once again. The move has been made for the 43, but here comes Forsyth to join in, make it a three-way hunt between the two for what is a podium battle between the 43 and the 71. They're fighting for third in class. Now Craig Forsyth, though a pro machine, is just fighting to get in front and try and build a separation for his championship points.
Yeah, and meanwhile, I will say that Matt Taylor, maybe because he stopped as much as he did not get a penalty. He had only a 24-second stop there.
Interesting. So we've learned, cut the corner, stop, and maybe it doesn't lose you time?
And maybe just because he took so much time on pit entry, I don't know. I don't know how iRacing decides these things, Arjuna. It changes track to track, and sometimes you just can't keep up with it.
I mean, what do you mean? You're not Mr. iRacing? You can't tell us everything?
No, I can't.
Not a bad call from Taylor, though, because he's dropped himself into clean air. And now we'll see what he can do with that, given that he's got the opportunity just to settle back into line now. Over to Malone, Morhart, and Wilson once again. And well, that's a poor run under the exit of turn 2 on the oval as Morhart closes in on Malone's rear bumper. 4 seconds now off the back of Brian Bennett. If you are Matthew Morhart, pro versus am, what do you think is going through his mind right now, Andrew? What do you think Morhart is thinking?
I think Morhart is probably just like kicking himself for what happened at the beginning of the race and losing those 2 spots right off the hop. And the other problem that Morhart is facing right now is that when you've been following a driver for so long, sometimes you fall into the trap of almost copying his inputs and his braking markers and his power down points. And what that can do is it can actually make it very, very difficult to pass because you're just accelerating at the same points or braking at the same points, and then suddenly your driving styles are basically the same and you're not gaining any advantage where normally you would have that little bit of an advantage with having a different style, different braking points.
And it's why sometimes you have to try and look for moves just so that you don't start doing what the driver in front of you is doing and not just playing mime with one another. 20 minutes in this race complete. It's 2 seconds at the front, by the way. Gotta say, in this GT3 class, as much as Sean Campbell has been the class of the field, Ryan Otis is doing an admirable job just to keep him in check at the top of the running order. There is the other of the Synergy Motorsports machines, the number 95, who's running away from Joshua Chin as well.
Well, I was about to say it's about equal, so we have basically 2 seconds from Campbell to Otis, and then another 2 seconds back from Otis to Chin. So your top 3 are basically settled into this sort of nice rhythm where they're all each in a little bit of a bubble. Of course, one small mistake for many of them, and they fall back into the clutches of the drivers behind.
Alexander Van der Stant, the next to peel off down onto pit lane. And again, given that you can take fuel for longer than 30 minutes in this 90-minute race, the opportunity to have a slightly short stint sees Van der Stant bring the 96 into the lane. Where are they in terms of traffic? That would explain it. There goes Phil Krause past a little bit of it.
Yeah, the leaders are finally starting to negotiate the second time through the GT3 field here, and definitely I think it's an opportunity for Krause to just extend that lead out. I think the leader does, the first driver definitely has a little bit of an advantage compared to the drivers coming back through. The leader can sort of pick and choose his position a little bit better. Meanwhile, here on screen, we're looking at Austin Young all over the back of David Sirwa for that 4th position. Now, Sirwa is weathering the storm so far, but it looks like Austin Young, just as he did on Michael O'Brien, he might just have a look down the inside here.
Setting things up, not going to force the issue though. Sirwa does run a little bit wide off of the apex. It looked like Young got onto the throttle just a little bit earlier. It was about equal on power down, and now the draw plays its part. And Young closes just that little bit more and looks to the inside as gravity works against him. He's not going to be stopped. Young slides his way on through, yes, a little bit deep. But even though Sirwa gets back alongside, through the jink to the left as they enter into the final corner with traffic in front of them, the HydroRace geodesic racing machine is back up into 4th.
And I was going to say that was crucial for Young to have that happen before they got to the GT3 traffic, because it's so easy to set up a move and spend like a lap or two just setting up your move, and then suddenly there's a GT3 car exactly where you wanted to put your car, and the move has been ruined. So the fact that he got that done just in time is going to be very, very important for him as, Brian and Chris Staples have a little bit of a coming together there.
That was a bit optimistic from the Kiwi, just trying to get his way on through, but the GT3 car has got to work through the corner, and because it's a double left-hander effectively for them to navigate on exit, you've got to be a bit more careful. It's a lumbering machine, a GT3 car, and so fortunately they get away without much drama, even though O'Brien might have lost a little bit of ground to Sirwa in now 5th position. Through the traffic then for Phil Krause, at least the majority of it. Just Brian Bennett, Joshua Chin, Ryan Otis, and then Sean Campbell left to go. And because they're all separated out, he'll be able to pick his way past all of them. And with a 4-second buffer to those behind, it's exactly what he'll be wanting to see. It gives him a bit of flexibility as to when he will want to come down pit lane. But given that they haven't come down before they hit the traffic, Andrew, the assumption would be they're going to run the cars as dry as they can.
And that's sort of typical strategy for a fixed setup race, because one of the things about a fixed setup race is that you start with the maximum amount of fuel that the setup allows and the rules allow. So generally speaking, what you want to do is go as long as you possibly can on that first stint, within a lap or two at the very least, and then you can have your shorter stints later on in the race and actually take on a lighter fuel for those stints as well. So it's very interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the likes of Taylor, Sexton, and Van de Sant do with their strategy. But as I say that, Graham Sanders is another driver, only 25 minutes into the run, he's down pit lane.
And I wonder if this is just potential. I was wondering what the track conditions are. We'll have to go and take a look at them as Sanders sits in pit lane and gets the car serviced. It is pretty cool, although it is the morning on iRacing day, so it is going to get slightly warmer as the race goes on. Motegi's not necessarily known, though, Andrew, at least from what I know. Yes, Japanese surfaces are known maybe for being a bit different in terms of the wear and sometimes being concrete, but I don't know. Motegi's not especially abrasive, is it?
The thing with Motegi is that the lack of camber in the track puts a lot of load on the tires through the corners. So while the surface itself is pretty smooth, actually, because you have to work the tires so hard through each of these corners, it actually does have a fair amount of fall off over the course of a stint and a fair amount of tire wear, but it's all down to track design rather than the actual surface itself.
That sounds like a racing driver excuse, I'm just going to say.
I mean, no, if I were a racing driver, I would just blame the track designer entirely.
I mean, you were without, throwing them under the bus as much, but
yeah.
Yes. It's an FIA Grade 2 facility, so it is quite interesting in that, it hosts Super GT, Super Formula. It's a lot of fun to blast around in the Super Formula machines, I will be honest, especially in virtual reality. Those are very fun cars here on iRacing. It's one that I wish got a little bit more love because I quite enjoy it. I know the stop and start nature isn't for everyone, but especially in these hybrid machines, Andrew, you regenerate the energy when you're on the brakes, and therefore it's important in the stop and start nature to understand when to maximize your regen and when to then use all of that energy that you're making, and so I quite enjoy it. I'm showing my bias.
So if you're a patient driver, it's a really nice track because it rewards being nice and smooth and safely loading up your tires and keeping the car well within the limits. For a more aggressive driver like myself, I don't personally find this track very nice. Just, again, because of that lack of camber, you feel like you can go deeper and harder into the corners than you actually can, and you just end up overdriving the car, burning off your tires. So I find myself getting frustrated around here very often.
And there's the racing driver excuse. Ha!
There you go. We finally got there.
Don't worry, trust me. We've just had our commentators race this past weekend. Racing driver excuses in galore from those that usually sit up here in the ivory tower. There's a reason why I stayed up here in the ivory tower, Andrew.
Yeah, well, I wasn't able to make the race at all this weekend, so unfortunately I had to watch from afar, but it definitely looked like a fun race that happened.
We'll get you into it, if only because those Australians have won 3 times in a row now, and that's unacceptable. And so clearly what we need to do next time is hopefully we're allowed to use a certain Solara IR18, and we'll go to Indianapolis, we'll say it's a 500-mile race, and say whoever comes out on top wins, and between you, Adam Crane, Wilson Nadeau, oh, come on, we've got that one netted up pretty easily.
Yeah, that's true. Now here's the question: is a 500-mile race on the road course against the rules?
No, but we don't have as much of an advantage there, so we're not doing it.
That's fair. Okay.
We are being 100% biased here. we are being honest. More drivers down on pit lane. I hear the klaxon go off. It's Chris Staples in that fun fight with Carter and Forsyth that said 15 laps is enough. They apparently have enough fuel to go as much as 20 laps or so, and so a little bit earlier in than maybe was anticipated, but maybe that's also because tires are starting to go off. Otis has lost a bit of ground now to your race leader Sean Campbell, and Josh Chin is into the draft and starting to close back up.
And it truly is Otis losing the time, because Josh Chin has held the gap steady to Sean Campbell at that 3.7, 3.8 second mark. But it's Ryan Otis just falling ever so slightly into the clutches of the number 73 of Josh Chin, and you can definitely tell that Chin has turned up the wick here.
It's nice to see that we've got these drivers continuing to fight it out. Yes, we know that Sean Campbell has been hard to beat at the front, but Sean Campbell's also one of those alien-level drivers that can jump between cars, jump between series, and all sorts of different disciplines, and still find ways to be fast even with limited practice. And so Otis and Chin have put up admirable efforts, but in some ways have been fighting for what we have dubbed on occasion as GT 3.5 championship, as there goes, I believe, Alex Guyon down to the lane in the 08 Synergy Motorsports machine. And indeed, now that's half of the GTPs, Andrew, that have come in before their fuel tanks have come empty.
Yeah, that's Guyon coming down pit lane right at the hour mark, so he's a little bit closer to what I thought would happen here. My guess is, based on the timing of Matt Taylor and Van de Sant coming down pit lane, you're looking at probably within the next 5 minutes, all the rest of your LMDHs coming down pit lane. I think you could probably get maybe 54, 53 minutes left, but certainly no more than that. So I do expect a flurry of activity over the next couple of laps here.
Pit crews will be busy. What's happened here as we glance at the replay up towards the very top of the track, and it's just a bit clumsy between Creighton Carter, and I think that's Craig Forsyth, the other car involved. I did note on my timing screen as well that Austin Young had also had a bit of an issue of his own. What's he done out of turn 3 and 4?
It's just another case. I think Austin Young, remember what I was talking about of the aggressive driving? Well, this is the case where, again, I think he just put in a little bit too much power and a little bit too much steering, and the car just kept on rotating on him, got a little bit off track, and probably cost him a couple of tenths of a second there.
And he bails and says, I've heated up my tires enough, get me out of this first stint, and rolls down pit lane, leaves just Kraus, Bader for Sirwa, and O'Brien yet to do so. He is up on the jack, so I was wondering what they're all doing in terms of the tire gambit, and it would appear as though Michelin's for all, 25 plus seconds, the minimum pit stop time across the board. Alexander Van der Sant and Alex Guyon with slightly longer stops and maybe putting in just that little bit more fuel. Not coming in just yet, though, at the end of lap 17 for these drivers. Campbell still leads from Otis and Chin as they've continued to gap those behind. Are my eyes deceiving me? Now, sometimes I do know I am quite crazy, but the front splitter of Josh Chin's car does look like it's picked up some damage.
And we'll have to get a little bit of a closer look at it.
Come on, Jin, get closer here, Chin. No, it looks fine.
No, it's fine. I think it was just a trick of the light, Arjuna. But yeah, to me, it looks fine from this point of view, at least.
I was just wondering where you could even pick up damage like that, because the curbs here, they're all flat.
Yeah, they're virtually non-existent, aren't they? So yeah, it would almost have to be off the back of another car. But I just don't know that Chin has gotten close enough to the back of another car to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It hasn't necessarily been the closest to Otis through the course of this race either, and as traffic is once again going to split them momentarily, it's the 95. Continues to run in second. As that's, I think, a potential pit stop. Yes, indeed. David Siro's 99 rolls its way down. Just 3 cars left in the GTP class, LMDH class, excuse me, left to come down. Mobility Resort Motegi. It's going to take some getting used to for us, but maybe some people don't know, Andrew. This track, of course, built by Honda, owned and operated by Honda, with the intention of bringing oval racing to Japan.
And it succeeded in that intention until, unfortunately, a certain earthquake has damaged the oval, at least at this point, beyond the economic repair of that oval. So now we are, in real life, basically stuck with the racing on the road course only. But fortunately, we do have the virtual oval and the virtual road course here.
Yeah, it could be worse. It's something that at least we can relive here on iRacing. Here comes Zero out of pit lane, by the way, just in front of Otis and Chin, and alongside with Sean Campbell, with Matt Taylor directly behind. Already 9 laps into the run, let's not forget as well. So with tyres up to temperature and all that gamut going on as well. Drivers in pit lane, Trevor Malone, Chase Wilson, and drivers in the GT3 class make their way down. Here comes Taylor back up underneath, though, and using the warm tyres to his advantage. Zero can do nothing but watch as Taylor grabs 6 spot away from him.
I think that goes to show Arjuna just how powerful that undercut was for Matt Taylor, because he was a good 3 or 4 seconds behind Matt Taylor, behind David Sirwa going into that whole pit stop exchange. So a little bit of a longer stop, heavier fuel load for David Sirwa, combined with some nice fresh tires, definitely allowed that move to happen, hot tires. Meanwhile, Bettifer in pit lane from second place. Now it's just Krause and O'Brien on the old tires.
Krause is making this stint as long as he can, and I think that goes to show that he's just going to maybe push a little bit more in the next remaining stints of the race. So Graham Sanders down out of the penultimate corner, now in towards the final sector of that. Still as John Bettifer sits, by the way, one of the longer pit stops that we've seen. It's a 29.7 second stop, but it's going to see him get comfortably clear of his teammate behind. And now we'll have to just wait. When does Krause come in? He's still got some traffic to work his way past, and some GTP, LMDH traffic as well.
Yeah, traffic galore here for Phil Krause. Coming up onto the back of Alex Guyon here in the 08 machine. Guyon didn't have a very happy pit cycle and has fallen further back and is now at least temporarily 1 lap down until Phil Krause chooses to come down and take his stop here. I'm guessing, if not at the end of this lap, then the end of next lap.
One private label team hype machine has come down to the pit lane in the form of Josh Chin. Phil Krause is able to get through nice and tidily onto the limiter as well, and now rolls his way down. Where is Bettifer in comparison through the S's, and still with a good half of the lap left to go. He's going to get onto the brakes and still has to get past potential. No traffic, in fact, for him to work his way through. He's got a clean shot back towards the start-finish straight.
And nice clean track for Bettifer. It's going to allow him to maximize these tires. The problem is that the tires aren't quite up to temp yet, so it's probably not going to be the outlap Bettifer was hoping for, but keep in mind that Krause is going to come back to him just a little bit because Bettifer's tires will just be that much more up to temp. But I seriously expect Bettifer to come out well behind Krause here.
Well, Krause actually goes for a 3-second shorter stop as well, so there is a bit of a delta there between the two of them, and so as we watch Bettifer onto the pit straight, it is a full 7-ish seconds behind the number 91, the private label team hype machine. Michael O'Brien has gone onto the 23rd lap of the run. He is the only driver to have extended the stint so far, and we'll see where that plays him at the end with his slightly different strategy compared to the rest of the field. There's a look to the inside for Bettifer as he cycles past a little bit of traffic. Meanwhile, though, Matthew Morehart yet to come down pit lane. He's let Malone and Wilson come down instead, and now the AM drivers find themselves on track fighting with one another for the win here in class.
Yeah, it's been a decent sequence of pit stops for Chase Wilson. Allowed him to close up on the back of the number 69 of Trevor Malone, and he is pressuring the back of Malone right now, and you can tell that Wilson is definitely very comfortable being sort of the more aggressive mover, as have a LMDH splitting the difference between the two. That's always got to be so shocking for those GT3 drivers when something like that happens. You're setting up your own move, and then suddenly there's a car in between you and the car you were almost about to make a move on.
It helps if you have experience driving the other class, I feel. You know where they're going to go for some of those moves, and so you can sometimes avoid it. There goes Campbell off and away from the lane, by the way. Otis drops and rolls as well. And so now it's going to be a question of where does he feed out compared to Joshua Chin. Chin's already through, and in fact Chin may have bridged the margin to Campbell. So there's an opportunity now for potentially Chin and Otis to get into the fight for the overall lead once more, as we find ourselves in a very, very interesting situation.
And certainly Josh Chin in that first stint, he was looking like he could match Sean Campbell on pace, at least in the race setting here. And you can tell that Campbell is using up all the track and then some, as he even put a little bit of a wheel off the outside of the corner there. So he is starting to feel that pressure from Josh Chin. And as you say, I think Josh is just in that drafting range now as well.
It's an important one for him. He needs to make sure he comes out at least in front of Otis, if not with more success. There's a mistake, I want to say, probably from David Sirra as he looks to the inside of Matt Taylor. In fact, this is a attempted pass. Should we call it an attempted pass, or maybe an attempted avoidance of a crash? Either way, it sees him off into the gravel. Not the only driver to have had an off. Here's Jimbo Pfeiffer at the very same corner.
Yeah, I think that was more of a missed braking zone than a actual attempted pass. And I hate to keep on harping on this, but the lack of camber in these corners, when you miss your braking zone, you don't have anything to stop your car, so you just kind of keep going. Meanwhile, that was an interesting looking spin there from the GT3 driver. And is this Matthew Morhart making a mistake?
Is it about to be deja vu is my question. So Craig Forsyth out of pit lane and spins. Matthew Morhart out of pit lane and spins as well.
Now Matthew, what he did was he got into the corner too hard, and you can see he was going out to the
and then he shifted down as well.
Yeah. So he was trying to get the car slowed down, but when he did, it increased the revs and it basically rotated the car on itself. I think he was also pressing to make sure that he maintained, because he had gotten out in front of Trevor Malone, the driver he had been battling with for so long, and then so he was trying to press, make sure that he maintained that position, didn't have to be behind him for another stint, and he makes a mistake and he's behind him for another stint.
He's got some gap to now close to get onto the back of them as well. So adds pain to the misery, as it were, and unfortunate there. 50 minutes to go. We've had the first pit stop cycle come and complete. The differences have started to present themselves, yes, but there's not much of a difference at the front of the GT3 class when you really dive into the numbers. If you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll be able to see the last pit stop times. Yes, Josh Chin was about 1.5 seconds shorter than Sean Campbell in the box. Same goes for Ryan Otis compared to Josh Chin as well. But Josh Chin can save fuel with the best of them. He could very well still be on the same fuel number as those two drivers that now in front and behind of him.
And even at 1.5 seconds, that's not a huge difference. That's maybe a lap worth of fuel. So just the fact that he's been able to close up to the back of Sean Campbell the way he has at the beginning of this second stint here, really, really impressive from that number 73 car. And for the first time, we might actually have a proper battle for the win here.
Can we make a suggestion? We have to BOP Sean Campbell in a way. He's only allowed to drive with one hand for the rest of this race now.
I think that's a great idea.
Should we say that he can only drive with his left hand, because now he's got to figure out how to upshift?
Well, I think that it's just a matter of he has to only have one hand on the wheel. He can
But that's being too
switch
easy.
hands.
That's the problem. That's being too kind to him.
Okay.
You see, I'm trying to make his life even more difficult. I'm just really, I really want a new winner today, Andrew, if you can't tell.
I do as well, and I think we've actually got a really good shot at it here, but it's definitely looking like a battle because Otis has come back to these two as well with the pressure that Campbell's facing. Otis is down now, closed it to within 2 seconds as well. It was as high as 4 between Campbell and Otis at the end of the last stint. So I think we've got a real good shot at the very least, a good battle to the finish.
Would you want to make the pass now, or would you want to save some fuel and then try to get a bit of an undercut? Because we have seen the undercut's powerful, and I would not be surprised. Chin's come in earlier once. He could do so again and try and make a bit of a gambit of it.
Yeah, I think that basically you want to save as much fuel as you can here, have as short a pit stop as you can, and then, again, as you say, make that undercut, make it work. And the other thing that we've seen is it's very, very difficult to pass, especially in this GT3 field. So if Chin can somehow find a way to get out in front of Sean Campbell, I think he's got a very good shot at being able to hold him off for the final stint.
Almost half of this race complete. Phil Kraus 7.5 seconds clear at the front of the field, so LMDH, there's not really much to go on as Michael O'Brien splits the two at the front of the GT3 field. Let's go back to the AM lead because Chase Wilson sits behind Trevor Malone, and the GT3s are really treating us to something special here tonight, Andrew, to close out what has been a fun 2023 in this first season of the Butt Kicker Sports Car Series.
There's been battles all through the GT3 field so far today, and Malone has been in a whole bunch of them, hasn't he? First stint it was Matthew Morehart that he was keeping at bay, and now it's Chase Wilson applying the pressure. But so far, so good for Trevor Malone. Despite all the pressure that he's faced, he hasn't put really any wheels wrong yet.
No, not just yet, but that sounds as close to a commentator's curse as I've heard so far today. And so I think there'll be some drivers hoping that there is no commentator's curse. Do you believe in the commentator's curse, Andrew?
You forget Road America, don't you, Arjuna?
I mean, the problem with Road America is everyone's had a curse there.
Yes, but I was the victim of a 2-part commentator's curse.
That's right. Lorenzo Bonder's had his fair share of curses there. I've seen my landmines there. I don't believe those are curses personally, but maybe some will disagree. Back over to the very front of the field, where you're not wrong that Otis has been able to close now that traffic has not really been a factor, and you can see at the track map, because we've only got 21 cars left on track, there's really not much that these drivers have got to worry about. It's a bit of a fair fight in a multi-class race.
And again, I think because of the nature of this track, it's allowed the traffic, the LMDHs to negotiate the GT3s just that little bit cleaner than we've seen in the past. So the gaps that sort of naturally form when the LMDHs slot in between these GT3 cars, it hasn't been as pronounced, and it's producing a 1-2-3 battle here at the top of the GT3 field.
In through the grass, that was nice and aggressive. Wonder how some of these drivers are doing up against that incident limit. It's now 3 cars within 1 second, though, at the front of this GT3 field. How late will they come on in? I also don't know if they took tires or not. And so that's one thing that we were kind of speculating and wondering about, Andrew. What have these drivers figured out, and what have they not told us coming into this one?
Yeah, particularly with the new GT3 tire parameters that we have that we're dealing with that you talked about earlier. It's definitely going to be interesting to hear from these drivers at the end of the race, the decisions that they were making out there, because I almost think that Sean Campbell might be doing maybe an opposite tire strategy.
I wonder if that's something as well where it all comes down to different thoughts about what they've seen with the fixed setup. We are more than halfway through this penultimate round of the 2023-2024 Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. We've stayed in the land of the rising sun. It's more great racing here from Mobility Resort Motegi. Don't go anywhere on RaceSpotTV. The run to the checkered flag in the next level racing Grand Prix of Twin Ring presented by DonateLive.net is coming up. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV and to the penultimate round of the Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. We're in the land of the rising sun. It's the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Twin Ring presented by DonateLive.com. Arjuna Kankipati alongside with Andrew Kinsella with more than half the race complete. Just 41 minutes left to go, and with a fight brewing at the front of the GT3 field and a sight for sore eyes if you follow the previous 16 rounds of the championship. Phil Kraus leads, yes, by 7 seconds in the LMDH class, the championship leader extending his margin there. But the champion-elect Sean Campbell, Andrew, is being put through his paces 3 cars within 0.8 of a second.
Yes, he is. Sean Campbell definitely feeling the pressure, and you can tell that maybe Campbell might be doing a little bit of strategy here. He's been not necessarily going as fast as we've seen him go in this race. His best lap has been a 1 minute 50.3. He's down in the 1 minute 51.9s, 1 minute 52.0s, as you can see with our graphic with Ryan Otis there. All 3 of these drivers going much slower than they have at the beginning of the race. So it's either the tires have gone off and they're all doing a slow second stint, and they didn't take any tires on that first stop, or Sean Campbell is just sort of strategically maintaining this pace, and Otis and Chin are just saving fuel behind him.
There is a big fuel save going on as well. Be curious to see in about 20 minutes time where things play out. Might be even earlier than that if they decide to bail and jump in a little bit early. Malone in the lead of the AM class, by the way, has got a bit of separation to Chase Wilson, and guess who's joined the fray? It's a flashback to the start of the race. Matthew Morehart's got it all to do once again.
Unfortunately, except for this time, instead of having one driver in front, he's got 2 drivers in front with both Malone and Chase Wilson. And they'll be so preoccupied fighting with each other that I don't think that they're going to really want Morehart to come in the middle of this battle right now.
No, they'll be hoping as well that maybe he can get through relatively safely and just fight amongst himself. But even then, don't forget there is a point, and points that they will lose. Technical issues, it seems, have taken Jimbo Pfeiffer out of this one. Just pulls it to the side of the track and stays out of danger. That's about as safely as you could hope for in that sort of a situation. I don't think it's technical issues, though, for Alexander Van der Sant, unless the technical issue exists between him and the hardware in his rig.
Yeah, this is about the 3rd or 4th time that we've seen Alexander Van der Sant make a mistake under braking, and you can tell he's just not very happy with the brakes on that LMDH hybrid there, and I think it's just a product of the track again, and the braking zones and the heavy braking opportunities that you have. Here is a replay of Phil Kraus coming through, and look at Ryan Otis looking to the inside of Josh Chin through turns 1 and 2, and that battle has allowed Ryan Otis to get back in front of Josh Chin, but it's also allowed Sean Campbell a 1.5 second lead, Arjuna.
It's in real danger of breaking away, and now as one of the Hydra Race geodesic prototypes dives past as well, they'll be hoping that Campbell's pace is interrupted. I've got to say, I'm not sure if Chin's necessarily going to be so happy with the dive by his teammate. Not saying that Kraus did anything wrong in that situation. It was just wrong place, wrong time, all things considered, as now the opportunity for the win has potentially slipped past them. Having said that, though, the undercuts worked once. It might have to work again, and we've still got the full 40 minutes in this race to go, and both these cars, in fact, all 3 of the front 3 contenders have machines that look like they've just rolled off of the production line in Germany and could be heading out to new customers around the world. It's been fun with the 2 BMWs that we have in the field, Andrew. The LMDH representing the latest in sports car prototypes, and of course the M4 GT3 representing what has for a long time been a staple of sports car racing, and increasingly in the last handful of years has become at the very top of the sports car pecking order.
Yeah, it really has, and it's been fascinating, as you say, to watch these 2 cars coexist on track together and the different characteristics of both, and the drama that it has led to. But it's hard to tear your eyes away from the battle of at the front of the GT3 field right now. And remember how we were saying that Sean Campbell was going in the 1 minute 50.9 or 51.9s, 52.0s? Well, that last lap, as soon as Ryan Otis got around Josh Chin, a 1 minute 50.77 for Sean Campbell.
And instantly shows us the gambit that he was playing, and Draft's gone. There's no more of it. Hopefully Graham Sanders can play a bit of a cork in the ball. Just stamp on the brakes. Brake check him just a little bit, and we'll see the gap close up just that tad. Race control's not had much to do, to be honest, which I'm not complaining about, Andrew. They've been able to kick their feet back up and relax more than they have through parts of the season.
It's one of those times where sometimes you just need a little bit of a clean race to have everybody calm down, especially before what we're about to see in 1 month's time, because if racing at Daytona over the years has taught me anything, it's that place, pretty much anything can happen.
Yeah, but you know what Daytona has proven to me a lot is that, especially in timed races like this, fuel saving.
Fuel saving is important for sure at Daytona, but at the same time, it's one of those tracks where you go through a full stint and then suddenly you come back out and your car has completely changed handling, and it's so easy to make mistakes at that point where you're back on the track again, and a small mistake at Daytona costs you at least 4 or 5 seconds. So I think that there's going to be some drama. Especially,
it depends on where you make those mistakes as well, right? If you do it coming out of the bus stop onto the banking, it can be especially painful. As an example, if you make a mistake in through turn 1, it can still actually hurt you quite a bit in through the International Horseshoe with being placed offline, and that being a factor. Morhart's closed back up to Malone and Wilson. I think they've been battling just a little bit amongst the pair of themselves. And again, a reminder that the Pro Class machine may not be fighting on track for a championship with those two in front, but they are taking points away from one another as they run not just for the win in the AM class, but 5th in the combined GT3 running order.
And with Andrew Marquez being away for this race, certainly Morhart, I think, was hoping for more from this race than he's gotten so far. And unfortunately for him, it's been mostly self-inflicted so far. Didn't have the best start, and then that mistake through turns 1 and 2 at the beginning of this second stint on cold tires has really cost the number 62 driver.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate one, and I will just point out that for Matthew Morhart, not the only driver that we saw making that sort of mistake, so it's clearly easy to do, and it does indicate that they were potentially taking tires as well. That was Chase Wilson on the grass and a little bit more sideways than I think he would have wanted. Regains his composure back into the groove as with 33 and a bit minutes left to go, Matt Taylor has headed down on towards the pit lane and signals that the pit stop window is open for business. And for the final time in 2023, at least in the Sportscar series, Matt Taylor hits his marks.
Nicely onto his marks for Matt Taylor, and Van de Sant is down pit lane as well. These were, of course, your first and second drivers in the first stint to come down pit lane. I think Taylor came down one lap before Van de Sant did, but at the same time, no surprise to see them coming down pit lane together here. With 33 minutes to go, you definitely know that both of them are taking basically full loads of fuel and going as long as they can here on the second and third stints.
Just noticed, by the way, on the back of Matt Taylor's car, he's not done anything bad today, has he?
So far, I think he has not.
Okay, so he's only the villain in his own story.
Yeah, but to be fair, it's better than having cursed on your car, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's Chris Fowler's unfortunate tag. Well, Michael O'Brien has Kiwi, doesn't he, written on the side of his car?
I believe so.
I can't see it from that camera angle, that's for sure. We'll get a good look as he comes out of the hairpin, potentially. No!
Oh, he's got a sponsor there.
Ah, okay. He's gone with the money-making opportunities instead. He does have Kiwi written on his car in the Lionheart Retro Series, so you can join us this Thursday for that, because they're back in action as well as they head to Road America for the final round of their Road Course Championship in the Butt Kicker Grand Prix of Road America, presented by Arena TV. What's happened here, by the way? Because business is booming suddenly once again for the GT3s.
Yeah, you could almost say that the pace that Sean Campbell was showing, he's had to switch back into fuel saving mode because his last lap was a 52.29, which is probably one of the slower laps that Sean Campbell has done around Twin Ring Motegi in a GT3 car in a very, very long time, Arjuna.
Sounds like a lap time I might be able to do.
Hey, I am not a GT3 driver, so I'm in no position to chirp these drivers, but at the same time, you know that Campbell, if he could go faster. He was even slower that last lap with a 52.58. So you have to think that some form of fuel saving is going on here.
Yeah, no, without a shadow of a doubt. They once again are in the realms and the depths of the fuel mileage strategy calculation. Some of these drivers may have spotters helping them work. You can hear there from Chin there was a save, and from Otis a look to try and get past Sean Campbell. I think we're going to see a swap for the lead. I don't think Otis is saving as much fuel as those around him right now.
Well, and I also think that Otis wasn't prepared for just how much Sean Campbell is saving, because Otis was just trying to brake at his normal braking point, and you could see that Sean Campbell was lifting off the gas and braking early. So it was definitely, I think, more of a forced move from Otis than a on demand, really trying to take a look on your leader there.
30 minutes on the brink on the clock. It means that from this point it's easy on fuel, to the point where you will need less than the maximum you could put in the car, regardless of how long you have been on track itself. These are all things going through the mind. It will be a bit of a splash and dash, and Ryan Otis doesn't want to wait around again, slightly caught out by the early lift of the throttle by your race leader, Sean Campbell, at number 26, and as they concertina back on up, no one's peeling off to the lane just yet. I would not hate that call. I get the sense. Watch the time this time by. 1:53.47 the best. It's a 1:52.387.
So 2 seconds off Sean Campbell's best time this lap. So either he has some terrible tires on, but more likely he is saving as much fuel as he can. And this is the real question for Otis and Chin, is how much time can you get from this undercut? If Sean Campbell is losing 2 seconds a lap fuel saving, if you come in now, that's 4 seconds worth of fuel that you can put in extra compared to Sean Campbell, and potentially be able to make that up on track. But the longer you wait to react here, the longer you wait for the undercut, the more difficult it'll be to actually come out ahead here, because I think Sean Campbell, what he's doing is trying to minimize the stop time here, trying to go as long as possible, and he's going to probably not take tires on this pit stop.
And so in the immortal words of people that can write lyrics a lot better than me, gimme, gimme, gimme a battle for the GT3 race lead. It didn't go like that, Andrew? Is that what you're telling me?
I don't think that's the lyric, no.
I mean, I think we got to come up with a cover version of our own then, potentially, because Joey Tebben can be on the microphone and we can get a RaceSpot band going. Might have to band together to see if we can chip attention towards more than just the battle at the GT3 field, though, because Austin Young's on his recovery drive and has his teammate Graham Sanders in his sights. And let's not forget, championship implications up towards the frontier. They're running 1, 2, 3, 4 in the order they are in points right now, Andrew. If Graham Sanders loses out to Austin Young, it will slightly get that battle for third a little bit closer.
And it will also cost Sanders and potentially Young even more of a shot in this next race. So really, you have to believe that at this point for the championship, it's down to Kraus and Beteford. But if you're Sanders and Young, you don't want to let go of the hope. If you can just keep on and keep in mathematical shot for this next race. But we have Phil Kraus down pit lane, so he took a little bit of a shorter stop this last time. And he is one of the first in your LMDH field to blink.
And so as the rest of the field keeps on keeping on, in fact, having said that, right on cue, I think both Graham Sanders and Austin Young have made their way down on towards the pit lane there. You can see on board the number 100 with 27 minutes to go. He follows Kraus in. Young follows his tire tracks in as well. And you see some GT3 machines up on the jacks getting some tires taken. And so Kraus has dropped off the jacks already, has been stationary for 25 seconds and counting, and 28.2 total will be his time in the box as he rolls away. Still net fourth on track, all things considered. We just wait for Beteford to see where he will fare out as well.
And it does, one thing to say, Matthew Morhart has found a way around Trevor Malone in the pit stop cycle. So we were talking about how much torture Matthew Morhart had. Malone had a little bit of a slower stop than Morhart, and Morhart has found a way by your AM class leader.
And it was with a slightly shorter pit stop as well, so important. There is a spin off two. It's Graham Sanders who has just kept it out of the wall, I think, has not collected the right rear with the Armco barrier. And maybe a dent. Oh, never mind. He's back on pit lane.
Yeah, no, I think he did accidentally or actually get into that Armco barrier that you were talking about just a little bit.
I think Ryan Otis is down on pit lane. Sorry, we'll go and take a look at the replay in a moment, but here comes what we were expecting. Otis in earlier than those around him for the GT3 win.
Yeah, and now here's the thing is Sean Campbell, if he was fuel saving, he can't afford to save any longer. He's got to go as fast as he can, because if he fuel saves too much here, Otis has got a real shot at this undercut. Again,
we've seen the cold tires be a real factor, so we'll have to watch this. Let's keep an eye on the replay, though. This is riding with Graham Sanders, so had already been beat by Austin Young to pit exit. I will note that. And so we rejoin the track. He goes immediately out wide, just trying to be a little bit more aggressive. Oh, Young gets a big snap, and then as Graham Sanders on the inside curb, he's on the power and then loses the rear end.
And actually, no real contact there, but I think Sanders was just frustrated and sort of had to tow there after losing out to his teammate there, because that was his real battle on track, and you saw his shot at the championship slipping away. But look at this, Betafer is now down. He's got the gap down after his pit stop down to about 5 seconds to Phil Kraus. So he cut out about 3 seconds of the gap between himself and Kraus, but I don't think that that's quite enough at this point. He's got to find some pace here on this final stint, this final 24 minutes of this race, if he's gonna really take it to Phil Kraus here.
Yeah, we're not going to see it, I think, improve unless close on in, unless Betafer is willing to push the margin and maybe in traffic be a bit more desperate. Are we going to see Campbell and Chin into pit lane, though, this time by? They've been on track for 14 and 15 laps respectively. No exit stage right there for Campbell, and indeed not for Chin either. And so for Otis, if you're wondering what the pit stop time is, if you're wondering what number you need to keep in mind, 13.1 seconds. My assumption is no tires would be taken from Ryan Otis if he stopped for that short period of time.
Yeah, definitely a no tire stop there for Ryan Otis. So the question is how will that affect the tire temps, and also how will that affect the undercut? Will he have the pace here to get up and close up to Sean Campbell?
So how many more laps do they even realistically have at the front to go? We know that the fuel window can be as large as 19, 20 laps. They're on to the 15th and 16th lap respectively, so they could go 4 or 5. Sean Campbell instantly, now that Otis has come down to pit lane, is back on the money in terms of speed, though. Here's the last lap time. It was a 1:55.66. We'll have to keep an eye for Otis, what he can do to get his tires right back up to temperature. Still a long way to go for them, though. Michael O'Brien yet to come down pit lane in the LMDH field. He will cycle back down and promote Phil Kraus back to the lead of the race. I do believe, though, that Michael O'Brien is in contention to still get back up into maybe 6th position and battle with his teammate Matt Taylor. Only time will tell. Chase Wilson is also yet to box. He's trying to go as long as possible. I think we're going to see him probably though, Andrew, in a handful of laps' time.
Campbell, Chin, Bennett, and Wilson in your GT3 is still yet to come down pit lane. Shout out to Brian Bennett as well. He's been nice, solid in that 4th position. Of course, he's 3rd right now with Otis having already taken his pit stop, but he has been just quietly sitting about 7, 8, 9 seconds back of your race leader this entire race, and he's just had one of those quiet races that we always say sometimes quiet is just really good.
It is sometimes what you need in championships as well, just a season where you stay out of trouble. And for Bennett, it's not going to be a podium necessarily unless there's trouble up the road, but he's definitely shown that he's been able to keep on the straight and narrow when he's needed to. Here's a look, by the way, at John Betafer, who is today's BMW Performance Driving School driver profile. 16 starts, 16 top 10s. That streak continues, as does the streak of top 5s. 15 of 16. Now, 4 wins, 5 pole positions, and he won his first race, of course, at the Circuit de la Sarthe. What better place to win your first race in the Butt Kicker Sportscar Series, if we're being honest. Championship, though, Andrew, it's going to go down to the wire, and what has been a rough and tumble, up and down campaign. Austin Young led in the early stages. John Betafer's led on occasion as well. He's still in the mix going into Daytona.
Yeah, it'll all come down to Kraus and Betafer at Daytona. And we've seen, you talked about a rough and tumble series, and this has certainly been it. There's been some penalties that have been handed out. There's been some elbows out racing, shall we say, over the course of this season. But I think that it's all going to come to a head in Daytona. It's going to be one exciting finale.
And under the night lights as well. It's always fun. I've been called out for saying the stat on every broadcast related tangentially to Daytona, so I'm going to make sure I do it again. Whenever you go racing at Daytona with those lights, they're turned down to 20% of their maximum capacity, so that the headlights on these endurance racing machines actually have to do something, which, I don't know, Andrew, I find that fascinating personally.
I do as well, especially, like, given how you could pick almost any value. So I wonder how it was that they just settled on that 20% figure.
I wonder
like how many different levels did they test all of these different headlights on, you know?
As Josh Chin, by the way, is into pit lane, so we'll get a sense for him versus Ryan Otis. No Sean Campbell in just yet, so that is just something else to keep in mind. I wonder if part of it was, let's turn this slider down until we see our energy bill go to a point where we think it's reasonable for the 24-hour race, versus how much can people still see, and we can have some fun with it. Off of pit road, Chin's going to be in front, but by a small margin. He was stationary for about a second and a half shorter. That played out in the stop time as well. It's 2 seconds difference, though. Undercut hasn't worked out for that 95 machine.
No, so far it's been advantage to Chin, and we'll have to see what happens when Sean Campbell finally does come down pit lane. But that was a really short stop for Josh Chin there. He did a real good job apparently saving some fuel, because to have almost a second and a half shorter than Ryan Otis just over those 2 laps, that's real big for that number 73.
Oh, there was contact without a shadow of a doubt there for Sean Campbell. Sorry, Andrew, but as one of the Hydro Race geodesic cars was sliding its way on through, Campbell got a bit of a hip check, and I wonder if he's going to be down to the lane this time by.
Yeah, you would have to think that at a certain point he has to cover off Josh Chin here. So the fact that he got a little bit of contact there, if I were Campbell, I'd definitely be looking to come into the lane here.
And so look from up above. It's not on entry. Instead, it's on exit, where it's a slight bit of contact. You don't really get the best angle from there, but it's those nervy moments, the miscommunications that sometimes set some of these drivers off, and this will give you a much better look. Yes, it was a bit of netcode, but they get away with it. That could have been a whole lot worse. Campbell is in, and maybe to no one's surprise, and he's just hit his box, I can tell you that right now, and I would assume he's going to be in pit lane for even shorter than Josh Chin.
You would assume that, but it's not guaranteed given how much fuel saving Josh Chin was doing. We're up to 11 seconds, 11.0 for Sean Campbell, so that was 0.7 quicker than Josh Chin.
But the margin on track is even larger than that, just because I think Sean Campbell had really ratcheted up the intensity after Ryan Otis had dived down to pit lane. It's 3.7 seconds. Sean Campbell's put it to bed.
He has, and is it really any surprise there, or Sean Campbell will do something like this? He made it entertaining for us for a while, but I think he's got this one in the bag.
We need to BOP him for next year.
I definitely think so.
Let's put him in the BMW M4 GT4. How about that? I think that's a good idea.
Just a class of his own. He gets his own class there.
No. Sorry, he scored with the GT3 still.
Yes.
But, you know.
He's the only one in the GT4, though.
Exactly, yes. It would be totally fair. Not unfair at all. There would be no issues whatsoever. Brian Bennett, by the way, in and out of pit lane in 4th position. The quietly confident day continues to rumble on. Matthew Morhart, by the way, yet to find a way past Chase Wilson. Is past Trevor Malone. Chase Wilson, an even shorter stop than both of those GT3s behind, has found himself back into an AM class victory spot.
At the end of the day, as much as we like to try and hype up that undercut, and sometimes it does work, but more often than not, it's going long that really does the trick, because you're just stationary for so much less time in the box, and that's exactly what's happened here with Chase Wilson. That being said, I know Matthew Morhart hasn't made a pass on track yet, but I think he's got a real shot in these final 15 minutes, because not only is there him, but there's also a very hungry Trevor Malone right behind him. This battle is not over yet.
And again, Trevor Malone will know that he's fighting for points even with Lionheart, so if he can get past, that's extra points for him. Lionheart knows if he gets past, there's less points going in his direction. iRacing's build had plenty of intriguing things as well to come. I'm quite curious to see how Mugello plays out, something that maybe we will look forward to in our 2024 Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. Wondering, Andrew, what you're thinking of and what you're looking forward to moving forward. We've had a pretty fantastic schedule, if we're being honest. We've ticked off most of the boxes you could hope to tick off, but what would you want to add into the mix?
Well, I mean, the one thing that we don't have in this series that really defines endurance racing in general is dealing with the weather. So I know we don't quite have it yet in this build, but more than likely before the next Lionheart Sports Car Series season starts, we will have weather and rain properly overhauled. So that would be my addition.
Oh, I don't know. They're being very hesitant to commit to how quickly they're going to roll it out. I know we're not getting it for Daytona, both for us as well as the 24. I'm hopeful it will come after that, though, because that would be very, very fun, especially given that, Andrew, we got a little bit of a sneak peek. We weren't meant to, but a sneak peek as to what the weather forecasting system is going to look like, and it does look quite cool.
It does, doesn't it? Being able to see the cloud covering the precipitation and the weather radar in real time as a spotter and as a crew chief, that'll be very interesting.
It's much better than some other platforms where you just wait basically for a box in the right corner to say 30 minutes from now it's going to be sunny, cloudy, or rainy, and that's all you really can get. Phil Krause has said, you know what, I'm going to get back to the lead before even Michael O'Brien dives back down to pit lane. With 14 and a bit minutes left to go, it's the private label Team Hype number 91 that's back on top at Mobility Resort Motegi.
You know why he did that, Arjuna, is because I think he's sensing just a little bit of urgency. John Badefer has cut the gap from 6 seconds down to 4 seconds now to Phil Krause. So it's not as comfortable a gap as it once was, and Badefer is definitely closing over this final stint.
It's definitely forcing the issue, that is for sure. And as Michael O'Brien comes down to pit lane, there's now no one in between in class, and so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or rather it was 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of points running on track. Austin Young's going to take advantage of Graham Sanders' mistake. He is, by the way, back out on track in that number 100 machine, so I do wonder if there was maybe a technical issue that had befallen that car as well as to see it drop on down.
I almost wonder if maybe there was a fueling error, Arjuna, where he took tires but then didn't take any fuel, and then he got out and realized that he didn't have enough fuel to get around again.
That is actually a very good shout, you know. John Badefer has been shouting, by the way, that he's never going to give you up, Phil Krause. 4.5 seconds, that margin. 0.03 of a second between the lap times last time by. So they're pretty much matched in terms of pace in the running order. It's all just going to be about mistakes and staying out of trouble. And if you see that traffic in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there's not much of it. They've got pockets of GT3 cars to come across, including the leaders in the GT3 Pro class. See how they work their way on through in these dying stages of the race. I was wondering about next season, what I might want to see, and I looked at the schedule and I was kind of going, you know what we don't have that maybe we could have, Andrew? And
What's that?
You may hate me for saying this. A street course.
I mean, okay.
It's got its place in endurance racing, let's be real.
So, could it be incredibly entertaining? Yes. Will there be a mountain of penalties coming out of it? Also, yes.
Absolutely. But that's half the fun. Is you get to the race results at the end and you go, I have absolutely no idea if it's going to hold like this. Race Control's got all of the race to still look through. No, we don't actually want Race Control's life to be difficult. We want it to be more like this, more like it's been today, because our poor stewards have been having to drink that Panera drink to keep themselves caffeinated up over the course of this one. Although, there has been passing at Motegi today, which is, as some of our YouTube fans have noted, sometimes a rarity.
Yeah, this track is not necessarily noted for its passing, but we have seen a number of moves on track, some very good moves, in fact. Austin Young, in particular, has done a good job of moving through the field all the way back up to third after that mistake in the opening few laps. But so far, it's just been the moves that we've been hoping for have been the moves at the front, and they're the one set of moves that really hasn't happened, has it?
No, not the way that we would want. We are going to have an interview, though, with Sean Campbell where we get to ask him, Sean, you didn't have it all easy this time. Talk us through that one.
Exactly, and he's going to have to explain just how much fuel saving he was doing there, because he was 2 seconds a lap slower than he normally would be.
Sean, did you suddenly get transformed into Arjuna in terms of driving ability, or were you saving fuel?
I think that's a valid question to ask.
I think that the framing is the right way as well. The gap, by the way, down to 3.2. Kraus lost out on that last lap alone, 1.2 seconds. It's all about catching the traffic in the wrong places. Next car he's going to catch, though, is his teammate Josh Chin in their private label Team Hype number 73 machine, and so he gets through relatively easily. Betafer launches it up the inside of Ryan Otis into turn number 3.
Those are the types of moves you have to make if you're John Betafer. You can't afford to lose any time. You have only 10 minutes left in this race, so you're looking at maybe 5 laps, but probably less than that, or maybe 6 laps, probably closer to 5. You really have to be taking out not just a couple of tenths, but almost half a second to a second a lap here.
That sounds easy, doesn't it? We can all do that. That's what happens when you get on iRacing. You put the AI to the minimum strength, then you start at the back and you waltz your way to the front, which I would suggest, by the way, it's quite fun if you ever want to feel like a hero.
Yeah, but unfortunately with iRacing, you can only get that experience with AI, basically, because if you go into any public lobby, you're not going to be that much better than everyone else.
No, then you get humiliated, and humiliated pretty quickly, unfortunately. Yeah, it's not great. Anyway, less than 10 minutes to run here of what has been a rather intriguing, albeit maybe anticlimactic in some ways, penultimate round of the season, the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Twin Ring, presented by DonateLive.net. Once again, just filtering out of that final corner. It's 3.2 seconds between these two drivers. Over to Chase Wilson, Matthew Morhart, and Trevor Malone. Wilson's been able to break that margin back up to the 62 machine to now over a full second, continuing what has been a very impressive campaign from the AM Championship leader.
Yeah, I've been keeping one eye on this battle, and it seems like just with a little bit of the LMDH traffic affecting it as well, the gap has been yo-yoing back and forth between Wilson and Morhart, but the constant has been that number 69 in the 7th position of Trevor Malone. He's been all over the back of that 62 of Matthew Morhart.
So these drivers probably find themselves with 4, maybe 5 laps to go, because Phil Kraus might still have the chance to put one more lap on them before the clock strikes 0. Some of the history of this track, by the way, opened in 1997. CART held its first Indy Japan 300 here at the end of March in 1998. Won, by the way, by Adrian Fernandez, someone that's driven in the Lionheart competitions over the years, including driving through me once at Indianapolis, but we can shift swiftly on from that. Of course, more history. Track built by Honda to bring oval racing here. It was the Lionheart himself, Dan Weldon, that took Honda's first victory on the oval back in 2004. And then 4 years on from that, Danica Patrick became the first woman to win an IndyCar race here, beating out Elio Castro Neves for her first and only IndyCar victory. It's one of those tracks where, yeah, if you know it, you know it. And much like most tracks in Asia, to be fair, it doesn't get as much shine as maybe it does, because Super Formula, Super GT, great racing, not necessarily seen around the world, and there's other gems around Asia that I hope that iRacing scans in the future, because if I want something in 2024, maybe it would be something like a Sugo. I mentioned street tracks earlier, maybe a Singapore, maybe a Macau. That would be crazy.
You got to think, though, Arjuna, with the Super Formula finally coming to iRacing and people seeing what a fun car it is to drive, and how popular it is so far, that maybe they might just start getting a little bit more recognition here stateside.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering as well, as we only have 6.5 minutes to go. I don't think we're going to see Chase Wilson really under pressure. I'm wondering, Andrew, who we're going to see out next year in this Butt Kicker Sports Car Series, because, of course, Kraus, Baderfer have put up a fun show up towards the front. Sanders and Young have kept them honest on occasion as well, but some drivers that we haven't necessarily got to see the most of. Of course, Adam Blocker, Flynn Lazier, two examples in the LMDH class, Miguel Vigo, Carlos Villa in the GT3 class. I get the feeling we'll probably see some new faces next year, and I'll be curious to see where they stack up against the competition.
And there's always those new drivers to Lionheart that you're not even thinking about at this point, that will show up just like a Sean Campbell, for instance. He'll just show up out of the blue, and then suddenly we'll have a true competition at the front of your GT3 field for Sean Campbell. So you never know who's going to be back, and you never know which of the new drivers are really going to come out and shine. So I think it'll definitely be very interesting. But yeah, I'm definitely hoping that the likes of Baderfer, Young, Kraus, and Van de Sant and Blocker and all of these guys come back out next year, and we have an even bigger field next year.
Hoping as well that field sticks around to the end of the season. I know there's always that typical drop-off, but with some series like this, you always want to see the participation stay high and people competing for everything they've got towards the end of the year. Traffic continues to play its part. We'll see if this ends up being a factor, though, for your race leaders, because there's Phil Kraus, 2.4 seconds. Now that gap to Baderfer behind as they enter into that final sector of the lap.
And I think it's just slightly too much for Baderfer unless Phil Kraus runs into some serious traffic here. Baderfer has been putting up a valiant effort. Last lap, he was only 3/10 of a second quicker than Phil Kraus, and that's just not quite enough, is it, at this point, with only 4.5 minutes to go?
Yeah, it's going to be too little too late. In terms of strategy, it was only a second shorter in the box, so maybe there was a bit of a lighter car between the two. I don't think anyone in GT3, by the way, took tires in the final stint, but...
Brian Bennett did.
Oh, did he? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, it was not necessarily a call. I think he must have taken at least 2 tires, because he had a 16.3 second pit stop, basically stopping at the same time as Campbell did. So... unless he filled up with way too much fuel, it has to have been tires.
I mean, better safe than sorry, as I can attest to. You always want to have more fuel than less fuel at the end if possible. The ideal is to have 0 fuel as you come to the line, but you'd rather have some fuel rather than no fuel.
Exactly. And then the iRacing has introduced an auto fuel system here, which can be hit or miss, let's say, with how much fuel you actually need to go flat out in a stint after you've been saving for a stint.
That's a good point. I will also just admit that I was doing some AI races and trying to get the auto fuel to work. It was in a similar situation where it wasn't a long race, so I'd intentionally limited how much fuel was in the car, and I wanted to slightly tweak how much fuel I had to get in, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work the way that I wanted to. And then when I turned it off, I couldn't figure out how to get it to reset to what I had before. It was confusing, to say the very least, and so I hope that the drivers have been able to figure it out, because they're probably smarter than me at the end of the day. What I will also say is, those systems, like you mentioned, Andrew, because they're calculating it based on various numbers, aren't always the best things to be reliant on. It is a good thing sometimes, as we come towards what will be 2 laps to go for your race leader, to be at least aware of your rough numbers per lap that you need to be hitting.
Yeah, the thing to keep in mind with that system, Arjuna, is that it calculates how many laps to go till the end of a race. So in a timed race, it's slightly less accurate because the leader, when it crosses the line, it'll affect how many laps there are in the race. But in a race with laps, if you've saved 2 laps worth of fuel in a stint, you can't then ask the auto fuel to only give you a 1-lap buffer. You need a 3-lap buffer.
Yeah, but maybe it's just me also having to drive at the same time for the first time while looking at data. And so trying to look down at a black box in virtual reality, I will admit, that's partly part of the disconcerting. And
I drive in virtual reality too. It is not that hard.
No, but you get used to it, Andrew. You develop sea legs, you know what I mean? You try staying out of virtual reality for 3 years and then getting back in it.
That's fair.
But it's one of those things where a lot of times on broadcasters, by the way, it's gotten very close, but not close enough for the lead. I feel like we don't get to talk about what the drivers are experiencing. And then I talk to some drivers at the top level of sim racing, and they go like, it's just all the same. We just drive fast.
Yeah, well, at a certain point, you understand what a car needs to do to go fast. So even if you're just tweaking your braking points slightly and the way that you're approaching the corner slightly, it's all relatively similar. And as you can see with Sean Campbell, who can go from an LMB3 to a GT3 to literally any car on this service and be fast, the best drivers will always sort of rise to the top no matter what type of car they're in.
Yeah, unfortunately, they find ways to be quick. We're on to the final lap, though, here at the newly minted, newly renamed Mobility Resort Motegi, and it is down to 2 seconds between Phil Krause and John Baderfer, but the charges come too late. 1 and 2 in points, 1 and 2 on track as well. But it is going to be advantage Phil Krause if he can stay mistake-free for another half a lap or so. Going into 2024, going into the season finale, the GSI Race for the Championship on January the 15th. Who knows what's going to be in store for us when we head to the World Center of Racing, but I think what we know is Krause and Baderfer have been at the front for the entire season. Andrew, it's no surprise they're finishing 1 and 2 here in the final round of the 2023 year.
Absolutely. This result here comes as absolutely no surprise to me, given what we've seen over especially the last 5 races with Krause and Baderfer. They were just able to elevate their game to another level here. In the second half of the season. You mentioned Austin Young was leading for a while at the beginning of the season, but he just hasn't quite been able to elevate his game the same way. Same with Graham Sanders. Adam Blocker was looking really strong early. He's tailed off. O'Brien and Sirois are starting to get their feet under them, but it's been Krause and Baderfer at the front the whole season.
Still one more race to go, but it's in 2024. Phil Krause will end 2023 with one hand on the championship and winning the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Twin Ring. It puts him one step closer to the inaugural Butt Kicker Sports Car Championship here in the LMDH class. What a fantastic way to close out 2023 with John Baderfer pushing him all the way to the very, very end. And it'll be a wait while we now see the rest of the drivers make their way to the line. That's Graham Sanders, who maybe does have some technical issues because he's back off the track once again. But here comes Sean Campbell, wrapping his way back to the line and closing off 2023 as champion-elect in the GT3 Pro class.
Meanwhile, Chase Wilson was able to keep his 5th place for your AM Championship lead as he crossed the line in front of Matthew Morhart and Trevor Malone, so that's one more step for him as well.
Yep, so Matthew Morhart in front of Trevor Malone, but not in front of Chase Wilson, so he is indeed your race winner. One more round of the championship to go. There's still a ways to go before we get there, and I'm sure the drivers will enjoy a bit of some time off, and then I'll get ready, not just for our championship showdown, but of course the iRacing Daytona 24, which, if I do remember correctly, based on the schedules that have been announced today, will be the next weekend after our season finale. And so our drivers will have had their fair share of laps in the Sunshine State come the end of January. There's Campbell. The 100% record continues. He's back on top in the GT3 Pro category. And it was pretty close on the run to the line. Is it going to change on the run to the line? Joshua Chin is out of fuel, and Ryan Otis pips him for second at the very dying depths of the race at Mobility Resort Motegi.
Now there's a commentator's curse if I've ever seen one. Weren't we just talking, Arjuna? It's better to have just that little bit extra fuel than to run out just before the line, isn't it?
Let's go and listen. I think that's probably what we should do, on board with Josh Chin, not just through the final corner itself, but let's listen in here as he comes down. Can already hear him being quite tentative and recognizing the need to save. Oh, that's painful.
Yeah, you can just hear the revs. He's trying to get whatever he can, whatever little bit extra he can, but it's just starting to cough. And here comes Ryan Otis.
And the line is there, and so Chin is probably around, 100 meters, if that short at the end, unfortunately, and that is heartbreak. But that is the margins with which they are playing, because Andrew, Ryan Otis now extends the margin for second in the championship points.
Yeah, and sometimes all it comes down to is those small little moments that make or break your spot in the championship.
So let's run you down then through the race results, the butt kicker race results. 2.3 seconds the margin between Kraus and Beta for 1 and 2 in the championship, 1 and 2 in track, and hoping that in 2024 we've got a showdown still yet to come. Austin Young recovers back up into a podium spot and is going to find himself in contention for third in the championship, with Michael O'Brien and David Sewell rounding out the rest of the top 5. Matt Taylor, Alexander Van der Sant, and then Bradley Sexton complete those that scored on the lead lap, while Alex Guyon is 1 lap down. Graham Sanders did sit in pit lane for about 5 minutes with whatever issues that he had. 2 laps down for him, and maybe slightly frustrated as well. Over to your GT3s, where Campbell in front of Otis by 5.7 seconds, but the margin between second and third just 0.4 of a second as Joshua Chin splutters out of fuel on his run to the line. Brian Bennett scored his 1 lap down, but really ran a solid race to be classified in 4th, while Chase Wilson stayed out of trouble, ran his fuel mileage, came across the line, the winner in the AM class, and 5th in the combined running order with Matthew Morhart, Trevor Malone, Lionel Callisto, and then Chris Staples and Creighton Carter the rest of the top 10, with just Jimbo Pfeiffer and Craig Forsyth being classified as DNFs here today. And so with that, we can make our way in towards our butt kicker post-race show and talk not just to the drivers that won, but potentially to those that put up some interesting fights as well. First though, we've got to head down in towards HyperX Victory Lane, where it is Phil Kraus that is standing by in that private label Team Hype number 91 machine, coming out on top once again in this Butt Kicker Sports Car Series. Phil, delighted that you can join us. Talk us through that one from your perspective. It seemed like a close one at the end as the margin continued to shrink.
Yeah, Arjuna, definitely a lot less straightforward than the timing and story may have led it to believe. Honestly, John and I were super close in lap time that whole race. But the first stint and second stint, I think I was a bit luckier in traffic, and then third stint, he was luckier in traffic, and that was really most of the variance between us. But in the end, I got a little bit luckier in traffic than he did, I think. But yeah.
It all evens out at the end of the day, and so it's interesting to hear that you feel like it played out distinctly across of each of those 3 different stints. 6th win of the campaign, and of course, Phil, an important one. Rounding out 2023, just 1 race left to go as we make our way on over to Daytona. How are you feeling going into that championship showdown?
Yeah, honestly, this race was definitely super important after I got pretty unlucky at Suzuka. Couldn't really do anything there. Had to rebound here to make sure Daytona wasn't going to be a real butt clench. I don't know what the gap is exactly right now, but it's definitely a lot more comfortable than it would have been if John would have won today.
And of course, heading into the new year, how are you feeling about the changes to this car? We talked about it a little bit. There's not been much time to get to grips with it. Have you felt much difference in this BMW M Hybrid V8?
I wouldn't say I've really felt too much difference in the BMW, but I feel like to feel the differences in these cars, you really have to start working at the setup a lot. And for the MC Esports Series at Daytona, I'll probably find out a lot more how different these cars are when I'm working with Adam and Connor to set that car up, because I can't make it, sadly.
Phil Kraus, winner here at the Next Level Racing Grand Prix of Twin Ring. Congratulations, Phil, and we'll see you in 2024 to round out the championship.
Cheers, Arjuna.
Phil Kraus on top in the LMDH class. We head on down to the GT3 category, where Sean Campbell continues the victory streak, albeit, Sean, it seemed a bit closer today. What was happening, though, when you went from running, 153s to 152.5s? Because those were lap times that I think I can probably do.
Well, I saw that Josh was fuel saving, and he got a really, really good first pit stop. He gained loads of time from that, so I took a guess that he was fuel saving. And I looked at his times once we kind of all bunched up, so I just slowed it down and tried to outsave him. But yeah, it was fuel saving.
He flew a little bit too close to the sun, unfortunately, spluttered to the line. Did you cut yourself a little bit close? How marginal were you on the number?
I overfueled by like a liter, maybe half a liter, but it was fine.
So you went safe, basically.
Yeah, a little bit safe.
we asked Andrew this question about the changes to the GTP machines. How have you felt with this BMW M4 GT3 machine? Has there been much change since we last went racing at Suzuka since the build a week ago?
The tire wear is much better, and I think that half a result from the TC change, but didn't have to take tires the entire time now. I imagine the Daytona 24 and Daytona for Lionheart is going to be like 90% tire wear by the end of a 4 stint.
Quad stints coming then, it sounds like, for the iRacing Daytona 24. Another great run, Sean. Thanks for jumping in to chat with us, and we'll see you next year to round things out.
All right, peace.
I think he has already wrapped up the championship, but we won't afflict any commentator's curse down on him. Let's go chat with Ryan Otis, though, because A, it seemed like an interesting fuel gambit that was going on across of the battle for the win, Ryan, and also a bit of a photo finish at the end there. Talk us through that race from your perspective.
Well, you know, I was feeling okay on the first stint. I was, I don't know, maybe an average of 10th or so slower than Sean, which, I don't know, was probably a little closer than I usually am. But then in the middle, everybody went super save, and, you know, we were all bunched up, and I was like, you know, this just isn't that much fun, so I just decided to dive in early and take my chances. But I really didn't trust my fuel calculator with the saving we were doing, and so I ended up overfilling by like more than a lap. So I was lamenting all this extra fuel I was carrying until the very end, when I saw with 1 lap to go, I could tell Josh was saving pretty hard, and I was like, oh, this might get interesting. And yeah, it turned out he was sputtering to the line, and I just nipped him. So that was fortunate, I guess, on my part, so I didn't mind carrying the fuel at that point.
Yeah, we were wondering how that auto fueler would work for some people, so it's good to hear that our speculation that some might get caught out on either side of it was not wrong. Heading off into Daytona, GT 3.5, as we've kind of dubbed it between you and Josh Chin, is in your favor. How do you think it's going to go? Daytona can be unpredictable at the best of times, and there's still a long way to go before we get there.
Yeah, there's a little way to go. You know, Daytona's its own thing. It can be a little bit packy, and then if you end up breaking the draft, then it just comes down to traffic and hoping that you don't get too many dive bombs into the bus stop. Basically, that's pretty much the race. So I think it'll be interesting, and it ought to put on a good show.
It's going to be fun. Can't wait for it. Still feels like there's a long way to go because it's in 2024, but I'm sure we'll be here before we know it. Congratulations on second, Ryan, and we'll see you at Daytona to close things out.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And so that wraps up our post-race interviews, and boy, am I looking forward to this. The butt kicker race for the championship on January the 15th, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. It won't be in daytime, it will be in the night instead, and Andrew, it's going to be rather interesting given what we've seen here today. Maybe GT3 Pro, GT3 AM championships done and dusted, but definitely not for the GTPs.
Yeah, the LMDH prototype class is definitely going to be an interesting battle right to the end. I suspect that we're going to see some tears on one side and some elation on the other side as this season winds itself down. But what a season we've had. Look at the schedule. Look at all the tracks that we've been to. But I think the nice thing about Daytona, you mentioned the timing with the iRacing 24. This is definitely an opportunity to potentially also see a bigger field because, as you know, being able to get track time around one of those 24-hour events is so important. So hopefully we see a nice big field to close out this season here.
Yeah, and what a season it's been, and hopefully that makes the championship fight even more intriguing in terms of the fact that some drivers are going to have to be ducking and diving their way through while keeping an eye on the points situation around them. It's been a fun 2023. Do not forget, there's still one more round to come this year of the Lionheart Retro Series. This Thursday, the Butt Kicker Grand Prix of Road America, presented by Arena TV, sees us wrap up the Road Course Championship and then head into 2 final ovals in 2024 to crown our champion there. And indeed, the month of champions will be January in this Lionheart Racing Series. For the team behind the scenes, thank you so much for joining us. And do not forget, if you want to learn more about the partners of the Lionheart Racing Series, about the 3 competitions the sanctioning body puts forward, head on over to lionheartracingseries.com, where you can stay connected to everything going on, and on social media you can stay involved with all things in the world of Lionheart. For Andrew Kinsella alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you in January to crown our champions from the World Center of Racing.